Patrick finally grows stronger, but the enemy beside him grows just as fast. Spoiler warning from here on. This Korean webtoon follows Swallow, the terrifying monster at the center of the Primordial Core, a dungeon humanity treats like an impossible wound in the world. The joke is that Swallow does not behave like a world-ending tyrant. He wants peace, sleep, and as little responsibility as possible. But the dungeon around him refuses to stay quiet. Renee worships him with dangerous intensity. Patrick the skeleton keeps the place functioning with exhausted common sense, and the Empire keeps learning that stepping near this dungeon means stepping into a political trap. Patrick is thrown straight into a purple-lit clash where every hit feels like a test of how much he has truly changed. He faces a powerful opponent in the dark, and at first the rhythm looks simple. Patrick has grown stronger through everything tied to Swallow, so he should be the one setting the pace. But here is the thing, the enemy answers him. Blow for blow, pressure for pressure, this opponent stands close enough to Patrick's level that Patrick starts questioning the entire situation. Maybe he is not the only one who gained power. Maybe something else moved in the shadows while he was busy surviving. Before that fight can settle into a clear winner, another figure cuts in and shuts down the brawl like it is reckless nonsense. Then the danger widens. A white-haired woman wakes in a cold room. A small figure speaks of a dream-linked gift, and soon the talk turns toward Swallow, humanity, the Primordial Core, negotiations, and the Empire's disaster. By the end, soldiers are scrambling, evacuation is on the table, and a hooded undead figure asks where Trevios is. After that cliff edge, the verified trail turns dark. No reliable panel action or readable dialogue is available for this stretch, so the story cannot honestly claim who moves first, who answers the hooded undead, or what happens after Trevios becomes the name hanging in the room. But the pressure from the last confirmed beat is already heavy. Patrick has learned that strength does not automatically make him safe. The Empire's mission is being framed as a failure, not a clean operation. Soldiers are being directed toward questioning people, entering town, and helping with evacuation, which means the problem is spreading beyond private dungeon violence. That is the important consequence. The Primordial Core is no longer a remote nightmare people can whisper about from a distance. It is brushing against civilians, officials, and imperial blame, and without new verified evidence, the safest ending here is tension, not invention. The missing evidence matters because this story runs on tiny turns of information. A single named character, a single wounded body, or one confirmed order could change the entire meaning of the fallout. So the recap has to stay anchored to what is known. Patrick's duel proves that whatever power he gained around Swallow is not a guaranteed trump card. Someone else can stand against him, and that makes every future fight less predictable. The Empire, meanwhile, cannot simply walk away and pretend nothing happened, because its people are already moving through the aftermath. The dungeon is outside the Empire's comfortable border control, yet the consequences still threaten imperial reputation. That is a nasty position. The Empire wants answers, the dungeon wants stability, and the last solid image of the conflict leaves everyone pointed toward a question nobody has safely answered yet. There is supposed to be movement here, but the provided evidence does not show enough to confirm it. That restraint is important. No new battle can be added. No secret pact can be invented. No character can suddenly appear just because the story feels like it should escalate. What remains is the confirmed shape of the crisis, and it is sharp enough on its own. Patrick has faced power that mirrors his own growth. A third party has already had to stop violence before it becomes even more destructive. Swallow's name is now tied to negotiations and the fear of what humanity will do when it feels cornered by the Primordial Core. And the Empire's side is not celebrating. It is cleaning up a mess. That means the dungeon conflict has changed from monster chaos into a public problem with political teeth. Without inspectable pages for this stretch, the safe path is to follow the consequences, not fake the missing scenes. The Empire's position is already damaged by the earlier confirmed events. A mission connected to powerful forces should have produced control, answers, or at least a clean explanation. Instead, it leaves soldiers questioning people, moving toward town, and dealing with evacuation. That is not victory language. That is damage control. And damage control is where powerful institutions become dangerous, because when they cannot own a mistake, they start looking for someone to carry it. Swallow becomes a perfect target because he is already feared. The Primordial Core becomes a perfect excuse because it sits beyond ordinary authority. Patrick becomes important because he understands the dungeon's chaos from the inside. But even he has just been reminded that he cannot muscle through every threat alone. The evidence still does not confirm new actions, so the story stays suspended around the last verified pressure points. But that suspension has its own weight. Think about Swallow's position for a second. He may be lazy, detached, and absurdly uninterested in ruling like a proper nightmare. But the world refuses to treat him as harmless. His dungeon is too powerful. His name is too dangerous. His existence forces humanity and the Empire to calculate around him even when he is not actively pushing anything. Patrick, on the other hand, is the opposite kind of problem. He is the responsible one, the skeleton trying to keep sense alive in a place built on nonsense. Yet even Patrick's judgment is shaken when an opponent proves that growth is happening on more than one side. That makes the dungeon feel less like a fortress and more like a sealed room filling with sparks. At this point, the lack of visible evidence becomes a boundary the recap cannot cross. No new location can be safely named. No fresh injury can be confirmed. No hidden power, system, tower, gate, or payback thread can be added just to make the beat louder. The story's grounded tension comes from what has already been proven. Patrick's confidence takes a hit. The Empire's mission collapses into uncertainty, and the Primordial Core becomes the center of a negotiation problem that may turn into blame. That is enough to keep the pressure alive. The funniest part is still the cruelest part. Swallow wants rest, but every force around him keeps turning his sleep-heavy existence into a crisis. When a dungeon boss refuses to act like a boss, everyone else starts acting worse around him, and Patrick is left standing near the blast radius. The only safe forward motion comes from the confirmed aftermath. Soldiers are pushed toward questioning, town movement, and evacuation support. That sounds procedural, but it changes the scale of the story. A dungeon fight can be contained if it stays in the dark. A political failure becomes much harder to contain once ordinary people, guards, and imperial witnesses are pulled into the same mess. Now every answer matters. Who caused the violence? Who crossed the line first? What does humanity do with a dungeon that sits outside the Empire's borders but still threatens imperial pride? And beneath those questions sits the name Trevios, attached to a brutal undead figure and demanded by someone hooded and ominous. That is the kind of thread that does not feel decorative. It feels like a door the story has not opened yet. There is no safe panel evidence to confirm what waits behind that door, so the recap cannot pretend the hooded undead finds Trevios or that Patrick steps into a new fight. But the verified setup points all the pressure in that direction. The Empire needs a story it can survive. The dungeon needs the chaos to stop spreading. Patrick needs to understand why his own growth is being matched by someone else. And Swallow, somehow, remains the center of the board even when he is not acting like a mastermind. That is what makes the manhwa's comedy sharper than it looks. The lazy boss monster may not want control, but his existence forces everyone else to reveal what they want. Fear, blame, loyalty, survival. It all circles back to the Primordial Core. The latest supplied beat still has no accessible visual confirmation, so the story coverage has to end where the evidence ends. Not with a clean resolution. Not with a dramatic, invented reveal. With the confirmed Cliff still breathing. Patrick has fought someone who makes him doubt whether his new level is truly special. The brawl is interrupted before it can decide the balance of power. A cold awakening and a strange dream-linked gift hint that the crisis is not only physical. The castle room discussions drag Swallow, humanity, the Primordial Core, and the Empire into the same knot. The mission is treated like a disaster. Soldiers scatter into investigation and evacuation work, and then a hooded undead figure demands Trevios. That final question is the hook. Somewhere beyond the missing evidence, the answer is waiting, and it probably is not gentle. What makes this stretch interesting is that the story refuses to stay as one simple power fantasy. Yes, Patrick gets the kind of moment that usually says the loyal skeleton has leveled up and can now dominate the room. But the manhwa immediately twists that comfort. If someone else has grown with him, then power is not a finish line. It is an arms race. At the same time, the Empire's failure turns the dungeon into something bigger than a monster lair. It becomes a political wound, the kind everyone wants to name, blame, and control before it embarrasses them further. Swallow's laziness makes that even funnier and more dangerous. He is not chasing the throne of evil in these confirmed beats, yet the world still bends around him like he is. Patrick may be the only one trying to keep the nonsense from becoming a war. Subscribe for the next manhwa recap, because once Trevios is named, the dungeon's quiet problem starts sounding like a massacre waiting to answer back.